Philadelphia Phillies have a little over a month left in the regular season, and as rosters are starting to form out, some guys are continuing to establish themselves and even start to prove how valuable they can be for this team come October. I'm going to get into all of that today on the newest episode of Phillies Digest, specifically a few guys in the bullpen who have had really nice either seasons or start to their late season, if you kind of get what I'm putting down here. The first guy, I really wanted to highlight this guy because he has been an absolute warrior this year for the Phillies, potentially the MVP of their bullpen throughout the entire course of the season. His name is Tanner Banks. Tanner Banks has had an incredible 2025 season. Obviously acquired from the White Sox at the trade deadline in 2024 in exchange for William Bergolla, one of the Phillies prospects. And, it was a fringe guy at first, nothing crazy. Obviously 3.7 ERA last year in the back half of his first Phillies season, a 4.13, 4.43, 3.06 in Chicago. Not great. He was just kind of some mid-level reliever. But he has completely. I could even sit here and say really turned his career around this year. 7.14 winning percentage. I know we don't really care a ton about relievers' winning percentage, but 5-2 with a 2.88 ERA. He served a 1.5 WAR as a relief pitcher this year, a 0.94 WHIP in 56 and a third innings, 53 strikeouts to just 9 walks. Tanner Banks has taken down some incredibly big innings this year for this Phillies team. Specifically, today, as I'm recording this on Sunday night, in the series finale versus Washington, Jose Alvarado comes into the 8th inning, gets a little shaky. 7th or 8th inning, gets a little shaky and loads the bases, nobody out. Rob Thomson pulls him after the third batter and goes to Tanner Banks against James Wood, the lefty. There was a good write-up today from Destiny Legardo of Phillies Nation. If you guys haven't checked it out already, I highly recommend checking out this article, specifically just about Tanner Banks. So Destiny wrote, Phillies left-handed reliever Tanner Banks came into Sunday's eventual 3-2 Phillies win with an impossible spot. With the bases loaded, nobody out, and the go-ahead run at the plate in the top of the 8th inning, Banks jogged onto the mound to face the top of the Nationals' order. The matchup favored Banks. The first two batters, James Wood and C.J. Abrams, were lefties that Nationals manager Miguel Cairo was not going to pinch hit for. Obviously, they're the best two hitters on the Nationals. Banks started off the first hitter, Wood, with 2 pitches on the outside corner for balls. The impatient crowd at Citizens Bank Park booed as Jose Alvarado walked to put Banks in this predicament. But Banks has made a living off sequencing. He came back inside to tie up Wood, getting him to ground out into a double play that scored a run but led to a pathway for an escape. The next batter, Abrams, flew out to center field to end the threat. The dirty inning was over. It was the first time a Phillies pitcher recorded 3 outs while facing only 2 batters since Jeff Hoffman did it on August 21st, 2023 against the Giants. This is from Rob Thomson spoke after the game about Banks. He said, right now, with as much confidence as he has, I don't think he's afraid of anything. Feels like whatever the situation is, he can get people out. Banks has also made a living off of getting lefties out late in games. He's essentially the closest thing to a lefty specialist in a 3-batter minimum world. He is second only to Joe Ross, a long reliever, in left-handed batters faced as a Phillies reliever. After Sunday's game, left-handed hitters are batting .163 with 3 extra base hits this entire season. Banks said it's about being able to connect the ball, about being able to command the ball away to those guys, get that front hip leaking. Sorry, Rob Thomson said this. And he's got some swing and miss. Like I said, he's been a godsend for us. And Rob Thomson is absolutely correct. Tanner Banks has done so much for this bullpen this year. And dare I say, where would this team be without Tanner Banks? A 1.5 WAR for a guy coming into a season with not a ton of expectations out of the bullpen is about as successful of a season as you can get. I spoke to Tanner Banks back in July down at the stadium pregame one day, and I asked him a lot about his mentality going into these situations, because being a reliever is so much different than being a starter. Starter, I mean, you're pitching, you know what day you're pitching, you know the lineup you're facing. A reliever, You don't know what days you're pitching. You don't know what part of the order you're going to face. And you can get thrown into a situation like today where you're Tanner Banks, bases loaded, no outs, and you just have to find a way out of it. First of all, he did exactly that today. But second of all, I wanted to read something back from July that Tanner Banks said to me in a little one-on-one here. So this is what I wrote back in July, about 2 months ago, or about a month and a half ago. Banks, 33, was acquired at last year's trade deadline in exchange for William Bergoll, the Phillies' 11 prospect at the time. Banks wasn't brought here to take down huge innings, but he's done that this year. Losing Jose Alvarado was a massive blow to the Phillies bullpen. Once again, just remember, this is back in July when Alvarado wasn't back with the team yet. They've had a tough search for in-house left-handed options. Banks has been forced into bigger spots than he's ever thrown in the majors, and he's ran with it. I spoke to Tanner Banks ahead of that game back in July about the Reds, blah, 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 blah. He said, "It's funny you mentioned mentality. That was honestly probably the biggest focus is, how am I mentally preparing? What am I telling myself, trying to approach every outing the same, trying to pitch aggressive, trying to pitch. It might sound weird, but trying to pitch on offense and not pitch to be on defense. Mentality is everything for a reliever. You don't need to have the best stuff in baseball to be a successful reliever. Of course, it helps, but the confidence when you run out from the bullpen is more important than whatever you do on the mound." From Banks, he said, "Are you pitching to get guys out and get back in the dugout so you guys can hit? Are you pitching to not give up a run?" And that was kind of my biggest mentality shift. I'm pitching aggressive. I'm not pitching timid, trusting the catcher, trusting the defense, and kind of just trying to have that self-talk between pitch. Like, what am I trying to throw? Continued here. Walks, kills a reliever. Tanner Banks has been one of the best in baseball at limiting them. He's walked just 5 batters in 39.1 innings. Keep in mind, this was back in July, 5 walks in 39 innings. And now, on August 24th, back in July, 5 walks to 39 innings. Now, on August 24th, he has 53 strikeouts to 9 walks. Just an incredible turnaround once again. But Tanner Banks and Ryan Kerkering have relied on each other a ton since becoming teammates. Banks said he talks to Kerkering all the time about his mentality. Kerkering, who has turned into the go-to high-leverage guy in the Phillies bullpen. Obviously now a little different with Johan Duran. But Kerkering, as Banks said, is never scared of the moment. I've had opportunities to talk to Kerkering too, like what his thought process is in big moments. We were in Sacramento, and he's got bases loaded, and it's a 3-0 count, bottom of the 10th inning. And I'm like, crap, what's going to happen? It's not easy. He throws his hardest pitch of the night. I'm like, in that moment, what are you thinking? And Kerkering said, I was just trying to throw it to the glove as hard as I can. And sometimes it's that simple. Sometimes it's not. But either way, Tanner Banks has been an unbelievable, almost a revolution for this Phillies team this year. Here, once again, 2.88 ERA in 56 and a third innings, .94 whip with a 1.5 WAR as a reliever, 53 strikeouts to 9 walks. One more guy I did want to give a little praise to here is a guy that I praised the Phillies front office for signing heavy the second they did it. And there was a lot of pushback on this. And as of now, I think I'm on the good side of things. David Robertson. David Robertson has flashed a little bit since he started pitching for the Phillies again. Obviously acquired on a prorated deal a few weeks ago. 6 games, 5.2 innings pitched, 4 hits, 1 earned run, 2 walks to 10 strikeouts with a 1.59 ERA. He's established himself as another go-to righty option in this Phillies bullpen behind Johan Duran and Orion Kerkering. And this bullpen is, starting to form. Obviously, Duran at the top. Then you go into guys like Kerkering and Strom. And then you get down into the Robertsons and the Banks. And, it's a pretty darn good top 5. And obviously you have some guys after that. Joe Ross, the obvious long man. But, this bullpen has guys. And they've proved it time and time again. This bullpen has turned it around after a pretty brutal start. And it seems like they have some confidence heading into the postseason here, especially heading into a big Mets series this week, starting on Monday, which is today as you're watching this at Citi Field. The Phillies hold a 7-game lead on the Mets. I don't want to be that guy, but the goal for this series for the Phillies, obviously you'd love to go in and win the series, potentially sweep. Just don't get swept. The Phillies have 4 more games at least at home against the Mets this year. If worse comes to worse and you can only sneak out of the series with 1, it's not the end of the world. You still leave there with a 6-game lead. But, man, I would love to bury those Mets in Citi Field. A sweep would be a 10-game lead in the NL East with around 30-ish games to play. It would basically bury the Mets in the NL East standing. So Maybe that'll happen this week, maybe not. But just wanted to give a big shout out today, once again, to David Robertson and specifically Tanner Banks for an unbelievable 2025 season. This has been the newest episode of Phillies Digest. Once again, if you guys have not subscribed to the channel already, please do so. My name is Luke Arcaini, and I will see you guys next time.